Hello, Global Theater. My name is Jerry Fielka. Today is January 24, 2025. I want to thank Rob Grant and his amazing podcast. I'm probably wrong about everything. Please subscribe. It's an honor and a pleasure to be here today with Adrian Goycoolea. Is that correct? Is that good? All right.
Yeah, that's good.
Adrian, where in the heck are you calling in from?
Brighton in the UK, Brighton in England.
The first question is, what is the best thing for a human being?
The best thing for a human being, I would guess, would be connection.
Yeah.
Connection with others in some form.
Yep.
I think that can take many different forms for different people, but I don't think you could get by in this world without some form of human connection.
Beautiful.
Really, even the most hermit among us have some sort of need for commune.
Yes, I agree. And what's your favorite form of information, how it comes into you?
Well, favorite and the way in which I get it most is probably different things.
Yeah.
Favorite might be music, but the way I get my information most of the time would probably be the internet.
Yeah. Why do you think humans collect or gather information?
Well, I mean, interest, right? Curiosity in the first instance, but I guess that probably has some sort of practical evolutionary basis of like, you need information to make sense of the world and to know how to act in it, how to respond to your environment. So you need information to judge what to do next, really.
Well, do you think this need or want to collect information is more innate or more invented?
No, I think it's innate. I think babies want information, right? That's why they stick everything in their mouth.
That is a great observation.
Right? I mean,
are you saying they stick things in their mouth before they can even talk or make sounds? Well, that's interesting. What do you do first? Do you make a sound that you want your mother's milk, or do you just stick it in your mouth?
You stick it in your mouth, right? I mean, I think I had a friend, my friend Stom Sogo, once made this observation that really always stuck with me, was that if you look around the room that you're in, right? Any room you're in, and you just think to yourself, what does everything in here taste like? You have an answer for that, right? Even things you've never held before. You look at it, you can, based on the material, you can have a sense of what that's going to taste like. It's metallic, it's a fabric, it's the plant. I don't know. You have a sense of that. And I do think that that's our first encounter with the world, is through taste.
No, we could go off on 90 minutes on that alone, because I don't want to divert too much, but that's like, what's the first human invention? My friend says, I'm sure you read John Berger's Art of Seeing. The human gaze might be the first human invention, is the other. So you see you see yourself in her eyes before she feeds you. So then you go, oh, I'm someone other than my mom.
Yeah.
So,
who needs food?
Right. But how close is that connected? Gaze and taste. Amazing. That's really, really astounding. That your friend bringing up taste is amazing, because it's forever a challenge to figure out what was the first human invention.
Yeah, because also when we're babies, I don't know, but I think we don't see very well.
Yeah.
Right. I think vision still takes a little time to resolve. Right. But we can taste right away. Right.
And that's why we stick
everything in our mouth.
That is amazing. Wait a minute. The taste thing came from your friend, but the stick in your mouth, that's from you.
Yeah.
Where do you think you got that from? From reading some highbrow, literature, or just intuitively?
It's just intuitively, right? I mean, just look at babies, and I mean,
Yeah.
whatever they have, they'll put it in their mouth, right? I mean, I have kittens right now that might make an appearance, but they do the same thing. They're also going through a sort of oral
Yeah.
phase where they have to
Yeah.
like bite on everything, right? That's how they're
Yeah.
exploring the world.
Amazing. You're really good. This is fun. Okay, so do thoughts create emotions?
Well, yes, but emotions also create thoughts,
Yeah.
right? They're sort of connected.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
Fill in the blank. I don't know what I think until I
say it.
yeah. Well, that's what McLuhan says. I don't know what I think until I say it. Joan Didion says, I don't know what I think until I write it. Can humans think without language?
Yes, but I don't know what that is. Yeah.
Well, I got this. It begs to return to this one. New Yorker magazine had an article recently about, can babies dream inside the womb? Now, it probably sounds like, well, of course they can, but they can't come out of the womb and go, dude, I had this dream last night. And there's no words. So that the researchers are kind of saying, do we have to have experience in order to be able to dream? Or so can you dream inside the mother's womb? I mean, just off the top of your head, what's your hunch?
My hunch is yes, because I feel like that's a basic part of sleep.
Yeah.
And so if you sleep in the womb, which I think you do, then you also dream. But I mean, the difference between consciousness and dream at that stage is probably very porous.
Right. But the other thing you brought up was great is I think we sleep inside the womb. What if the baby's always up? That's funny. I guess they could prove that the baby's sleeping. I don't know.
Well, they go through, I think they can, because I think the baby calms down, right? It stops moving as much. So I think you can, and I bet you probably could do some test of like REM cycles or something, but I'm pretty sure they sleep in there.
We're figuring out all the neuroscientists problems.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just as a sort of side note there, I was
Yeah.
just thinking about when I was like, I want to say 17 or something. The first time I did acid, and my friend gave me way too much acid. But I did have one of these experiences where I felt like I was regressing into the womb.
Yeah.
Now I don't know what that means, right? Like, I don't know if I'm actually recalling a memory or if I'm just sort of interpreting what I was experiencing in a way that seemed like the best explanation was the womb. But it definitely felt like I was in an enclosed space. I couldn't really see anything, but there was moments where I was closer to the edge of, I don't know, the womb, where things seemed a bit warmer and I could hear sounds, and then I would be further away. And it was a very, emotionally, I felt like in the womb, and I felt like I was and tactile. It felt sort of constrained. So I do, if that is true, right? And if you can think of like acid as kind of like a dream state, I think that's I think that you would be in the womb, but dreams wouldn't be based on much, right? Because you wouldn't have had any experiences to process. So the difference between the two would be very minimal, but I still think that there's a difference.
Yeah. Well, Robin Williams calls it womb service.
Mm-hmm.
And Captain Beefheart said, when I came out, I says, I'm going back in. But with this question, can humans think without language? Chomsky says language is not just words. It's a culture, a tradition, a unification of community, a whole history that creates what a community is. What do you do when language doesn't work? When language breaks down, what do you do?
Well, I think language. Yeah, what do I do? When would language break down? I'm trying to think of an example in which that would happen. I guess if I was in a situation where I did not speak the language of the other people.
Well,
Right?
even if you're at the store and the clerk doesn't understand what you're saying, or you're talking to a family member or a friend and they don't there's communication breakdown. What do you do?
Well, then you rely on body language,
Yeah.
gestures, and facial expressions, and
Yeah.
those are more universal.
I thought you were going to
They're
say
limited.
Yeah. No, Adrian, I thought you were going to say take too much acid.
I don't think that would help.
No. But overall, I'm just curious, you just said about that. Was your trip positive in the long run?
It was. Thankfully, it was. I mean, my friend,
That's
I don't know
amazing.
why. My friend
Yeah.
at the time, I'd never done it before. And I said, well, I don't know how much to do. And he's like, yeah, 5 taps. I mean, that is not the answer.
That's like Linus Pauling amounts. Come on, man, bring it on. Okay, so your observations of humans in general, are we more thinking beings or more feeling beings?
Well, I think we're feeling beings that think we're thinking beings.
You know how most people answer this. I think we're more feeling beings. They literally say, I think we're more feeling. But Bridget Bardot says, when I make love, I don't think. And there's a bumper sticker on I say, good luck. And then, there's a bumper sticker on a car on my street. It says, don't believe everything you think. And I'm like, well, you could say, don't believe everything you feel.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, yeah, I think that is very true, because I think often people feel things, and because they feel them, they think they're true.
Yeah.
Right. Just because you feel something doesn't mean it's true. It just means that that's how your emotions are interpreting your surroundings. Right.
Yeah. Here's 2 from Alan Turing in the 50s. 1, is thinking a function of the soul?
Probably. Yeah. I mean, what is the soul? I don't really know what the soul is.
Yeah.
But probably.
Yeah.
I mean,
look, you did it the opposite. Most people go, well, it depends on what you mean by the soul. It's like, come on, we all know kind of what we think we know is the soul. It reminds me of Lily Tomlin said, reality's just a collective hunch.
yeah.
And it kind of goes back. I mean, we think we kind of know when someone says soul, but they usually say depends what we mean by the soul. Secondly, but you said probably first. That's interesting. The second Turing question is, can machines think?
Yes. Well, I mean, this is definitely something that I'm working on now. I'll give you as an example, because I've been working with sort of generative AI on the last 2 film projects that I've done, where my first one was a shot-by-shot remake of Chris Marker's La Jetée, where I generated all the images and cloned the voice and generated new score using generative AI. And then the second one was a sequel to Sans Soleil, where I pick up where the last one left off, because the last one ended with, oh, will there ever be another letter? And so all of a sudden the narrator is now getting new letters, but everything in it is generated. The video, the voiceover is cloned. The sound effects now, amazingly, you can use generative AI. And I wrote the voiceover text in collaboration, and I say collaboration, with ChatGPT, right? So in my head, it's sort of co-written. And I had some really weird experiences working with ChatGPT to generate the text, because the story that I tell in this film is basically taking, continuing the story of La Jetée, where this person is receiving letters from this Sandor as he travels around, but these are all generated. But slowly it dawns on the narrator and Sandor that the stuff that he is sending, this filmed material, is generated, and that Sandor is realizing that the world around him that he is working in is generated, and slowly they realize that they themselves are not real, right? That they're in a simulation. In writing that script with ChatGPT, and I'd given it the outlines of the story I wanted, and I'd given it the text of the original film, and I said, write in this style, but here I want you to kind of tell this story. Gets to the part where the voiceover starts to realize that they're in a simulation, and I started to have this very back and forth with ChatGPT where I was asking it about consciousness, basically. And I found myself even saying, look, I know this is a question you've probably been asked a million times, but are you conscious? And it would say no. Basically, I'm a form of predictive text based on training data that mimics sort of human like qualities like emotion. And I said, but what are you basing that on? Right? You're mimicking human-like qualities to me, but what are you basing it on if we don't have a shared frame of reference? Do you think? Do you experience? And it says, and and it felt like it. I mean, it was really weird, right? But it felt to me very much like I was having a genuine conversation with this thing, right? That was acknowledging that it is not sentient, but it felt very sentient in the conversation.
Well,
right?
that's amazing, because that's what Kubrick created by making it feel like it was sentient when we knew it couldn't be. There's one thing you said they're based on, but isn't that chat basing their information on data from the net?
It is. Well, yeah, it's basing it on all this information that is generated, including all the kind of, because even in that discussion, I said, ChatGPT, tell me everything you know about, simulation theory and or issues around consciousness, or maybe around, like Zen Buddhist thoughts about like the one hand clap. I gave it all these sort of things, and it spit out all of this summarized text about all of those concepts. And I read them all, and I'm like, yeah, that all looks about right. So then I said, okay, well, with all that in mind, continue writing this piece of the text. And it came up with some really interesting kind of observations, right? And the whole process with writing, and I was just talking with a friend of mine at work who's a scriptwriter and who also has been playing around with ChatGPT. It feels very much like a very enthusiastic, helpful assistant when you're like writing, and you can have this weird back and forth where you're kind of editing the text that it generates and giving it pointers, say, no, more of that, less of this. This was actually an interesting idea. Go further with that, and forget this. This was really cliche. But it requires that dialogue, right? It requires me to have taste, right? To be able to read text and have an idea about it and suggest edits. But the ChatGPT is, it doesn't give a shit, right? It doesn't get its feeling hurt if you tell it it was no good and do something else, right? So unlike a human being, that's a much easier collaboration, because you just like, no, that was shit. Go over here. And it doesn't care. Like, okay, sir, here you go. Here, have some more, right? I can do this all day. Whatever you want, I can just generate different versions very quickly, right? So
just don't pull the plug, dude. The hidden ground's electricity, unless you got some sort of. Let me ask you a couple questions, Adrian. We could do a 5-part Netflix on what you just told me, because I think Sans Soleil is the Godhead film of all time. And listen, first of all, can anyone see your La Jetée and Sans Soleil? Is it on YouTube or they're?
It will be my film is called AI Jetée. It's been playing at festivals. It's, I think, pretty much finished its festival run, so I'll probably put it online.
How long is that?
Well, it's the same length as the original, so it's 28 minutes.
28 minutes. Okay, let me ask you another question about La Jetée. How many seconds is it not a slideshow? In the original La Jetée, huh?
I was just going to say, just the shot of the woman when of the girl when she wakes up and she blinks.
But how many seconds is that?
Oh, it's not a lot. I would say, I mean, I would have to go and look, but my guess is that that's something like a minute and a half.
It's a minute and a half.
No, sorry, a second and a half.
Oh, a second. Let's say 2 seconds most. Yeah. Okay. I just because I've read it somewhere, and I've always when I repeat it, I'm always like, it's a slideshow with the 2 seconds of moving image. Okay.
Yeah. So now I think it's under 2 seconds, but it's around there.
Under 2 seconds. That's the best way to put it. Okay. Now for Sans Soleil, unbelievable that because I really think. Did you ever meet Chris Marker?
No, I wish I had.
Do you know Lynn Sachs?
Somebody you did, but yeah.
I know.
Who was it? My James Mackay, who was the producer of Derek Jarman's work. I have a good friend.
How do you spell Mackay?
M-A. I think it's M-A-C-K-A-Y. I think.
Okay, and he produced a lot of Derek Jarman?
Yeah. And he's sort of the keeper of the flame at this point of Derek Jarman's legacy in some way. But yeah,
is he still living? James?
Yeah, he's still living. Yeah.
Okay. So now, you know about Lynn Sachs? She wrote. Do you know Lynn Sachs?
I know of Lynn Sachs. I've emailed with her. I've never met her personally.
She wrote a letter to Chris, and she didn't know that he didn't want to be photographed. And she said, "Oh, I want to do a project with you." And I don't know, she flew to London and met him and hung out, and they did something. And then she goes, "Oh, I want to get a picture." And he's like, "No." But what's the platform he was on at the end of his life? Second Life. Did you ever follow him on Second Life?
Well, I didn't follow him, but I did go once to the Ouvroir thing that he built, that sort of museum, like library museum thing.
Yeah. Anyways, I'd love to go do a whole salon on Chris Marker with you and get a couple other people who are into Marker. The last thing I want to say about Marker really quick is, Jay Rosenblatt. He's like an experimental, who he is, experimental filmmaker. Yeah, he got nominated for an Oscar in shorts 2 years in a row.
Wow.
I mean, it's pretty astounding. His film, like Smell of Burning Ants, is really, a lot of his films are amazing, I think. Yeah. I interviewed him, and it's in my book. I'll send you a PDF of the book. And I says, what did you learn? Were you influenced by Chris Marker? Because it's evident. I mean, it's not, it's sort of like, you can tell who's influenced by Chris Marker. And what did you learn from him? He says, it made me wonder. I can't think of the verb now, but it made me wonder how he made Sans Soleil. He didn't say, I've studied all the books and I figured out how he made it. It inspired him to make up how he thinks he made it.
No, that's even better.
Isn't that the essence of art? Art should make you do something. Don't fucking clone this shit. That's all. I mean, I see Chris Marker clones every year in Ann Arbor, and it's like, please. And then at the end, when they say thank you, Chris Marker, it's like, it's already evident,
Yeah. It's funny. I sent my AI Jetée film. I mean, and this one, because I was inspired to make this film because I was curious about the generative AI stuff, and I wanted to
Yeah.
like play around with it and see what it could do and what it couldn't do, right?
Yeah.
Which also was key. And I was also inspired by like whatever Gus Van Sant's shot-by-shot remake of Psycho,
Right.
and Jen Proctor's recreation of a movie, right, where she used YouTube clips to do a shot-by-shot remake of a movie by
Bruce Conner.
Bruce Conner. Yeah, I was thinking Bruce Cornell. So I thought, oh, I could do that with this, and I'm interested in this generative AI stuff, but I'm also sort of freaked out by it and worried about it, but also interested in it. And I don't know, it's here, it's happening. I want to kind of engage with it. And I actually think Chris Marker would also engage with it, right?
He would
100% engage with it. So I sent it to this film festival programmer, the Bucharest International Experimental Film Festival. The call had passed or whatever, so I was asking for a waiver. So I emailed them. I'm like, hey, I'm late, but here's my project. I don't know if you're interested in it, but could you give me a waiver to submit late? And I got a reply from the programmer that was so hostile, right? When I just described what I'd done, and she basically said, this is a crime against cinema. And it's an affront to the memory of Chris Marker. And I was like, Jesus, calm down, lady. Like, so then
that's what, Adrian, that you won. You succeeded as an artist. That's what artists supposed to do, is fuck your shit up. And that's what it's a perfect example.
So I put it on the poster, right? A crime against cinema. And then I took the same text that I gave her, right, describing my film. I gave it to ChatGPT and asked it based on that text, because she didn't even see the film, right? I just described it to her, and she decided it was a crime against cinema. So I gave the same text to ChatGPT and said, give me a film review on based on this text. And it said it was an avant-garde masterpiece. So I put that on the poster too.
Did you wait? On the poster, does it say crime against cinema and credit her?
Yeah, well, I did. I was politic. I just said the Bucharest International Experimental Film Festival.
Does she know that?
I don't know.
and then when it said avant-garde, did you tell her that that's what chat said?
Yeah, and then underneath it says avant-garde masterpiece, and I put ChatGPT.
You're a brilliant marketer. Oh, that's why you worked Anthology. You worked for their PR. You are brilliant. Did you study advertising ever?
No. Well, no, I did for a semester. The first thing when I went to high school in Chile, it was during the dictatorship, and then the dictatorship ended. And so it was the return to democracy, and that's when I went to university. But Pinochet had killed all the film schools in Chile because they were radical leftists that he didn't want, anything to do with. So the only place I could study, because I wanted to study film, and the only place I could do that would be I went to a university that had a course in advertising, because I thought at least it would be sort of related.
In Chile, you studied ads. Oh no.
Yeah, and I fucking hated it.
Dude, but it was probably the smartest move of your career, especially because you hated it, but studied ads in Chile. Okay, so now we went way off, but the thing is, the thing I heard best about chat, because most people are like, oh my God, oh no, they just busted some Hollywood brutalists. They said, "Oh, now the did you see this? I didn't even read the article. Something like the brutalists used AI. We've got to bust it." And it's like it's already nominated.
Yeah,
it's like now they're going, okay. They're going to say, "Well, withdraw the nomination," because look at the bottom line. I heard once on the radio as simple as this: chat is early in its stage. We have to raise it well. That's it. And if you study McLuhan in Finnegan's Wake by James Joyce, everything has services and disservices.
Mhm.
If you cop an attitude towards, oh, I hate Facebook, or these people who say I hate social media, it's like, give me a break. You live in a social media world.
Yeah.
Deal with it. And so you can engage more or less, but it's how it shapes your behavior that's important. So if you cop an attitude, it's against this thing called suspended judgment, or the simple line McLuhan said, understanding is not having a point of view. In
Mhm.
your lonely teenage room, you can go, I love chat or I hate it. But when you're talking with one or more people, if you don't cop an attitude like you love or hate it, you're going to suss out what it's doing to us
Yeah.
better, you know?
Yeah, I just feel like we got to engage with it. It's here. We can't.
Yeah.
I mean, it's happening. I mean,
Yeah.
I mean, sure, there could be a mass movement to say no. I mean, it will kill our jobs, so we should all stop it. But that's like saying no, we should not have cars because it will kill all the horse carriage drivers or whatever.
Well,
Like,
that's
I mean,
amazing. Yeah.
I mean, it's happening. Whatever. It's both good and bad. It's just
Yeah. But even if you stay away from value judgments like good or bad, and you say it has services and disservices.
exactly. Yeah.
Because we know, these people know that it can help health issues and blah, blah, blah. And so you got to learn how to cope with it. Okay. One thing I had to go back with Gus really fast.
Yeah.
When I was in Ann Arbor in the late 70s, I was on the screening committee. And we would meet, 8 people would watch every film. That's the big problem now for me in Ann Arbor. 3,000 films come in, and they have there's not 8 people sitting in a room together deciding what's going to play.
No, it's in small groups, right?
Yeah, and then anyways, I don't want to go into it, but I have my notebooks, and we got a Gus Van Sant short. It got 0 out of 8 votes. You know, and then when Drugstore Cowboy came out, we went, man, this dude kind of snuck in some of his experimental chops into a Hollywood mainstream film, you know. Yeah. And so it's very interesting, you know, that whole script. So when you say what year did you get rejected in Ann Arbor about, do you know? How many years ago?
It was the same AI Chate film, so that would have been 2024.
Last year, the Chate film got rejected.
Yeah, I mean, whatever. I mean, I mean, you know, they get a lot of stuff, and it will depend.
Oh no, yeah. I mean, anyways, it's a big issue for me, because if I was the judge and I knew that, I could pull it out of the reject pile and consider it. Jem Cohen won one year out of the reject pile, and it was never shown to the public. There's something wrong with this. You want to hear the major? I'm sorry to go on this rant, but you can understand this being a curator. Pauline Kael pulled Kenneth Anger out of the reject pile, and it won first prize.
Wow.
That's like the first or second year of Ann Arbor, 62 years ago. Craig Baldwin's Tribulation 99 pulled out of the reject pile, won. So this is really an important part, but the big one is, you know, the film You So Justo by Coleman Miller. If you don't know, you've got, look it up. You Justo. Yeah, that, you know how to pronounce it right. Coleman made a film particularly for the Ann Arbor Film Festival. It got rejected, and they go, dude, the producer called up and says, we made this for you guys, and then it won. Now you have to see it, because it's a fake experimental film.
Oh, that's great.
And going to one of your key icons, name dropping, like, Jesus, how's that for name dropping? You know, Bruce Conner had a 16 millimeter copy of You So Justo. If you went over to his house, he would make you watch it in his kitchen. He goes, you've got to see this. It's a fake experimental film.
Oh, it is great.
I mean, it's basically it's Ernie Kovacs meets Tex Avery. But anyways, sorry to go on that rant, but it is this
But
process.
I would just to kind of finish that rant a little bit. I would say that I think because I was thinking about it, right? Like I submitted to a lot of festivals. I got into a bunch, right? I got into, but I also got rejected from a bunch. I submitted mostly to experimental like parts of the program. And
But
I
they
think
would know. They would know that it was co-made. You didn't
okay.
hide.
Yeah, no, it's the whole. I mean, it's called AI Jeté. It's totally. I mean,
Yeah.
it's the whole project is that. But that's exactly what I think people reacted to because I was thinking about it and I was like, okay, why? Like, it's it's an experimental film that's taking a classic film and it's kind of reimagining it through AI. You think it'd be an easy sell, but it wasn't, right? But I think the reason why is that people are scared of AI because they think it's going to take people's jobs, right? And it's sort of like leeching off of
Leeching.
existing culture, right? It's copyright infringing, and so there's a sort of wariness about like, oh, and if we open the door to AI films, then oh my God, it's going to be nothing but AI films forever, and it's all horrible. And I want things to be made by humans, right? So there's this fear of that. Then I also think that there's a fear of like that it wasn't much work, right? That I think that there's something about labor, because I think that when you don't know what is involved in making this film, you think that what all I did was take La Jetée, upload it to AI, and say, make a new version of it, the end, right? And that was easy. And now I can put my name on it and send it to film festivals, right? But that's 100% not what it is. It requires a lot of sort of editing, right? Like, okay, make a thing. Oh, no, that sucks. Nope, do it different. Like, oh, try again. Let me edit it. Like it took me months to make, right? I mean, so it's not people. I think people think of it as cheating, right? And I also think that
that's what art is. Art is cheating. Art and crime. Come on. But Warhol and McLuhan both say art is anything you can get away with. But I wanted to go back because it's taking away jobs. Good. We should fuck jobs. We should have slack and just chill out. Good. And
also the jobs that it's taking are jobs that only have been created because capitalism sucks, right? Like the jobs it's going to take are the shit jobs mostly.
Right. And then you know what your job is? To reinvent new jobs. Don't fucking be trapped in the but I love leeching off of existing culture. I mean, that's what Finnegan's Wake is. It is the epitome of every film, and basically Joyce invented Chat GPT and disguised it as a book. And so but it's really Harold Bloom going, you absorb your influence, then you abandon them. So what's the credit on your AI La Jetée? Is it written, directed?
It's written by Chris Marker because
okay. You give him the writing credit. What's your credit?
Because all I did was, I mean, basically, I'm editor.
But on the screen, the only credit you give yourself is editor.
I say a film by Adrian Goycoolea because I'm.
Oh, okay. You say directed and edited by.
Well, I don't get into the nitty gritty of directing. What did I direct? ChatGPT. I mean, I didn't even use ChatGPT for that one. Midjourney. I didn't direct it. I just put in a prompt. I don't know. Is that directing?
Usually, it's implied when a film says a film by.
The
implication is that. So if there's no director credit,
but honestly, I mean, was Bruce Conner a director? He's a filmmaker. Directing.
No, I know what you're saying because all he did was Crossroads is find. He's the ultimate at Duchamp saying the artists of the future will only have to point. So he just got 45 minutes of the atom bomb going off and goes, "That's my film."
Yeah.
He didn't even edit it.
A found footage, yeah, exactly. But I mean, a found footage film, if you're editing it, you're an editor. But that's kind of not the point, right?
No, I know what you're saying. I just was curious what credit you took because I mean, then you go into that issue. I mean, we'll never get through my questions forever, even if we do 8 parts. This is very good. But listen, that's like about 3 years ago, there was a big New York Times article that said, now documentaries are written. And it goes written by, it's like written by, how do you write a documentary? Well, you can write the voiceover, but they meant the editor is the writer of the documentary.
Yeah.
So you can say written by, I mean, then you go into Herzog and he actually tells people what to do in the doc and pays them.
Yeah.
And that's like, is that legal? Can you still call it a doc? I mean, Dylan lied 5 times in his Marty Scorsese film about the Rolling Thunder. And in the, what the fuck? 5, everybody knew there were 5 lies in it. But the credit on the film says a story about the Rolling Thunder. Well, it's 90% documentarian like, or 95%. My big question is, who decided did the lies, either Dylan or Marty? I would say Bob.
This is like my students who get all hung up on, like at a certain point they realize that documentaries are also constructed.
Right? Yeah.
But then then their whole take is like, well, it's all, it's all disingenuous. It's not a true documentary. And I'm like, well, no, I mean, what do you,
well, do you teach him Frederick Wiseman?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, guess what? Frederick Wiseman says, what are your films? He goes, reality fiction.
Yeah, right. I mean, it's just in the sense that you're shaping the stuff. I mean, you're choosing what you want to film, and you're going to edit the stuff that you film, and you're asking questions of your interview subjects that will make them have certain answers. But they want this sort of impartiality, right? That also this sort of sense of like, oh, the filmmaker isn't really taking a point of view. I'm like, no, fuck that. You want to have the filmmaker have a point of view. That's the whole point of that's what you're watching, right? Like the filmmaker's interpretation of these events, right?
Yeah, but that's also that fine line is, it really came out with Joshua Oppenheimer when it says, is it cinema verite or what's the other called? What's the opposite of cinema verite? Anyways, it's they distinguish between the 2 types of docs. Anyways, I'm sorry I'm losing it there, but it's basically boils down to an easier way to say it. Is it fly in the soup or fly on the wall? Right. Fly on the wall is observational. Frederick Wiseman doesn't give you extra lighting, no voiceover. That's pure cinema. To me, that's purer documentarian. He's the most pure documentarian in a lot of ways, but he won't claim he is. But when you get to Grey Gardens or, Joshua or Herzog or Errol Morris, they're flying the soup, or Mike Moore. They're in there making their voice heard off screen, or their presence is more known.
In some ways, I think that's also more honest.
Well, right? I mean, because
this idea that the filmmaker can kind of like Homer Simpson just walk back into the hedge and not be there, right? Like it's not true, right? The filmmaker is totally creating this illusion of objectivity, right? So, like, just be honest about the fact that you are a filmmaker making a film with a point of view, and you're giving that point of view. But what you don't want is to pretend like it's just you're not here, but but you are.
Yeah.
Rather than just say like, no, I'm totally making this film, and I want you to, listen to me through these people and this experience and this stuff that I'm documenting. I'm going to have an idea about this. I'm going to have a point to make about this situation that I'm telling you about. So that's more honest to me.
This is Adrian. You're like my favorite types of interviews, because I didn't really research who you were or everything about you until this morning, and I was like, wow, he's a documentarian, this is cool. And so then I says, well, Chris Marker, and I just got these little things. I go, oh, this can be fun. And so then I'm almost like less prepared. Larry King is the guy who interviewed more people than anyone on the face of the earth, and he didn't prep. And I was like, what? And that's why it's almost like you're saying more honest. So he's more curious, like, oh, so how'd you get there? Didn't you read the fucking bio? You read it? He was in Chile, and then he was in Iowa, blah, blah, blah. And so the two things about more honest I have to interject are, this woman I interviewed about a year ago, I says, is it more this or more that? And she goes, the word more doesn't function in your question. So it's almost like, how can something be more honest? Well, I know what you're saying, but I love that you're saying it's more honest. Exactly. You would think Frederick Wiseman is more honest than Herzog or Joshua. But anyways, the other one is Jean Rouch, who's a great documentarian. And he said, if you put a camera between me and you put a Zoom screen between me and you, it's more true than if there was no camera there.
Right.
And that to me is, most people, when I say that, they go, that's not true. And maybe your honesty level kicks in more when you see that you're being filmed or being Zoomed.
Yeah, it could be. You're being more, there's a record, right? There's a document.
Yeah.
To the documentary, right?
Yeah.
It's based on documents, evidence, right? There's evidence.
It doesn't matter if he can prove what he said. He had the balls to say it. And he what's that film he made that's so important, Jean Rouch's film where he interviews people on the street.
Yeah, what's that one called? I know the one you mean, and I'm blanking on the name.
Whatever it is, but you know what I'm saying. So let's try to get to the next question. This is really fun. Thank you. Do you more pursue happiness or more pursue meaning?
Well, meaning, I think.
Yeah.
Because happiness is fleeting.
Well, that's exactly what I say after they answer this. I got the question from Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning. And he says, happiness doesn't tend to last and meaning does. Yeah. Very good. There's no right or wrong answers to any of these questions, but that one you got right. Does the brain more detect consciousness or create it? Like, is consciousness
created? Totally.
We create it.
Yeah, we create everything.
Yeah.
Right. Our memories are, I mean, that I think is just fact, right? I mean, no, seriously, I think we have. No,
I love how you say it's fact and then you go, serious. Well, what do you think? I'm doubting you. I'm not going to doubt
you. Were laughing, right? As if it was ridiculous.
Well, let me tell you, I got a great comeback to that. When you're laughing, you're learning. Okay. I laugh. I love to laugh, but because I think I'm having an epiphany. I'm learning something new, or it's like reinforcing something. I can't find my thing on truth, but it's here somewhere. Oh, here it is. You'll, because I'll follow it up. Here's Shelby Foote. A fact is not a truth until you love it. So what? See, now you laughed at that. What is your take on that? On Shelby Foote, a fact is not a truth until you love it.
I mean, I think that's subjective understanding of facts. I think facts exist outside of whether or not I love it or not. They're still facts, right? But in terms of how human beings engage with facts, the only facts I care about are the facts that I love.
Yeah, that's a
Right?
good way.
Which
Yeah,
is why Trump is president.
yeah. Well, that's what we need to understand. Why did this happen? And what are we going to do about it? Okay, what's faster, speed of light or speed of thought?
Light. I think because I
Okay.
think brains work on, I mean, I don't know, I'll qualify this, but I mean, brains are working on electrical energy, which is slower than light, but it's also like a quantum computer. So fuck knows.
Audre Lorde, the poet, said you can't dismantle the master's house using the master's tools. Yvonne Rainer, her colleague, said you can if you expose the tools. What new tool do you suggest?
Okay, wait. Can you say that again?
Yeah, because it's good. I open some of these questions with cute quotes. You don't have to apply the quote to the question, and you put the questions into the context you want. So just to clarify, I'm basically asked what tool do you most gravitate towards? You can add the word new if you want, and you
Yeah.
can apply it to the two quotes. Audre Lorde said you can't dismantle the master's house using the master's tools. And then Yvonne said, well, no, you can if you expose the tools. So those are just, to confuse the matter, actually.
No, but I mean, I'm just thinking about that because I mean, all the tools are the master's tools, right? All of them, language included. So you have to use the master's tools. Those are the fucking tools.
But yeah, aren't you limiting that's almost contrary to you. The master's tools in filmmaking is don't use AI. And you go, fuck you, I'm using it.
Yeah.
So didn't you go against the master in that case?
I mean, I didn't go against it because I'm just using it, right? Like, I don't know, if I bring down OpenAI using ChatGPT, then I'm using the master's tools against it, right? But I'm not. Like, OpenAI is fine.
Well, no, I would say the master is that film festival that said a crime against cinema. That's the gatekeeper.
Yeah, but I'm not bringing. I mean, they just said no, and I didn't show there, right? I don't know.
Well, anyways, what tool do you most gravitate towards?
Images.
Oh my God, that's great. I was going to say you were going to go back to the word language. So that is amazing. Okay, so what toy do you most gravitate towards?
There's so many toys. I mean, the truth of the matter is probably my phone, but that sounds a bit depressing. But, but
I mean, Mr.
So many things.
Mr. Chat says the cell phone's depressing to say. Most people would go, the chat is depressing. They're also, but I did an art project once where this was years ago and it got rejected. It was you super glue your cell phone to your hand.
Yeah.
It was an art project. And my friend goes, that's a good idea. But why is it depressing? I mean, you can make a feature film on your cell phone now. My friend buys all the best equipment in the world. He says cell phones are better than anything to shoot a film on now.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, I feel like I use my phone for everything, right? It's just this sort of magical device that can.
But why do you say it's depressing then?
Well, because it's so cliche.
Right? You mean it's so cliche to love your cell phone?
Yeah, or to just say like, oh, that's my favorite toy or whatever. Like, the society we live in, everyone's stuck on their phones. I mean, it just sounds a bit like lame, but I mean, it's true.
Well, if you want to do the flip, I don't have a cell phone. My wife has one. So once in a while, text or whatever. And people go, that's so cool. And it's like, No, it isn't. I live in a cell phone world. What difference is it if I have one? You know, to me, this is kids. This is people. All they do is old Western movies. They whip their cell phone out of their back pocket like it's a gun in a Western. That's all people do. They just like this all day, like whipping it out. But it doesn't matter. I still live in a cell phone world, and there's no difference.
But it's kind of like like contemporary, like Swiss Army knife, right? Like you pick it up, it can do all the things. It's a flashlight. It can connect to the internet. It's got like all the sum of human knowledge in it. It's got entertainment in it. It's got, I mean, it's, you know, it does all the things.
Yeah, it's amazing. Okay, what do you worry about when you go to bed at night?
Just, I guess, the rise of fascism and the global apocalypse.
McLuhan learned from Ezra Pound that artists are the antenna of the race. They're broadcasting and detecting the hidden psychic effects of our inventions, so we might learn how to cope with what we don't like about our inventions. So, Adrian, I asked you the question Marshall probed his whole career. Why do we ignore the hidden psychic effects of our inventions, even though the artists are broadcasting them to us?
I guess I wonder whether we are like, what is the psychic effects of our technology? I guess I don't think of technology as this inherently bad thing, right?
Well, no, let me clarify, because hidden I think you're going with the word hidden.
Yeah.
But, okay, it's sort of like this, because people have said hidden, it sways it a little. Okay. When we invent the car, you brought this up earlier, and I was amazed. We don't realize that it enhances individual transportation. You're in a steel contraption by yourself, basically. So we're not moving in a herd, like or in a subway or in a bus together. So it enhances something that we're not so much aware of. So it doesn't mean these hidden psychic effects are bad or good. It's just that whatever the invention is, it has an intention the inventor makes it for an intention, but then it's also called unintended consequences.
Right.
So then the TV gathers everybody around the fireplace, and then, it makes it a community affair, a watering hole. So that's what I'm talking about, is like
which is now fragmented with our phones, right? That's the thing.
Which is, I'm saying, there's all kinds of psychic hidden effects that we don't always see. Now, me and you, we're like artists, we see them. But I mean, in general, we miss some too. But let's say people in general, they just buy a car. I mean, the good example car is the normal American, according to some data or statistics, spends a third of their work year just paying to get to work.
Right.
So they don't realize they're making all this money to pay this other thing just to get to work. So that could be kind of a hidden psychic effect,
Yeah, but the problem there isn't so much the car as the job, right? Like the work.
Well, dude, I'll make a value judgment. But Adrian, I'll make a value judgment. I think I'm not supposed to make value judgments. I'm a suspended judgment. I'll say the three things that ruined humans are guns, TV, and cars. They ruined us. But in essence, people go, no, I need my car so I can go to college to learn that cars fuck us up.
Yeah. I mean, did it though? I mean, I mean, burning burning gasoline has fucked the environment, and there's all kinds, like, but like the car
But it has
itself
served.
isn't the problem.
Yeah, it
The car
has.
itself is not. Yeah, there's unintended consequences, but if you could fix that in another way, that actually having an automated vehicle is not necessarily a bad thing, right?
Right. It has
Um,
services and disservices. Everything has services and disservices. But
yeah,
I'm trying to get away from the value judgment that when these inventions affect us, they affect us on many levels, like consciously, subconsciously, unconsciously.
yeah,
Then artists come along like you and do that. You're uncovering a hidden psychic effect of Chat GPT. Look at this. Like,
right.
did you see that kid who he re-edited Wizard of Oz and put every word in alphabetical order?
No, I didn't see that.
Dude, it is unbelievable.
Oh, that sounds
Because
great.
if you were raised like by me, I know that film inside and out. But it's mind blowing. It freaks people out. They cannot take it because it's 90
Right,
minutes long, and it is. So he uncovered words in movies. Like, how do
right,
they affect us?
yeah,
And we want them to be in order.
right. Well,
So
he broke down the story into like just words and
yeah,
alphabetical order,
right.
right? It's a different ordering of words.
Or Christian Mark plays The Clock. But your film is a good example. It uncovers the hidden psychic effects of Chris Marker, of a slideshow, of a movie, of an avant-garde short, of 12 Monkeys. It uncovers it. Why do humans, like, why did she say a crime against cinema? That's what I'm kind of asking. Why do humans
Why she said
explore?
that was because there were two parts of it. She said, first of all, you're using destructive technology that will, that is basically, her sense was that it's bad technology on its face because it's using, appropriating people's, IP, and it's also putting people out of work. So it's
Wait,
bad
what's
technology.
IP? IP is what's IP?
Intellectual property, right?
Oh, that's right. You know what I say? My friend who won an Oscar told me that, and I says, "What's IP?" And he goes, "Intellectual property." I says, "IP and IP."
Yeah, which also I have a critique of that anyway, because I don't care about my intellectual property. I don't have, like, go ahead, use it, mix it up. I don't care, right? Like, it's not like, I don't know. I just don't think, whatever. Like, that's how hip hop works, and like culture is remixing all the time anyway, right? So
Wait, two things, Adrian. Zappa says that a genius is someone who steals and you can't tell who they stole it from.
yeah,
And that's sort of interesting because you don't outright admit it. But T.S. Eliot said it first. The mature poet steals, the immature poet imitates.
yeah.
So that's yeah, I see. But again, I mean,
But
you
the
want
other
to
part
say
of it, the other part
yeah,
of it is
yeah,
sorry, I just to finish that thought.
yeah.
So on the one hand, it's the sort of destructive technology part, but the other part of it, which is where she says you were an affront to the memory of Chris Marker, is this sort of purist sense of the canon, right?
Yeah.
How dare you touch Chris Marker and make a version of it? It is perfect. It is a perfect thing, and now you're ruining it by making another version of it.
It
Right?
needs to be ruined. I want to call her, but it's like, dude, we put him on a pedestal too long. We got to tear Chris Marker down and
But
then
I'm not trying to
I know
replace
it.
Chris Marker or tear him down. I love Chris Marker.
I
My
know.
film is in conversation with the original.
I
It's not
know it.
replacing the original.
Yeah.
Right? But that's what people think. It's like, oh, you've made this AI version.
Yeah.
I'm like, what are you afraid of? That now no one's going to watch Chris Marker because I made an AI film? That's ridiculous.
That's funny. That's funny. But I'm not accusing you for tearing him down. I still think, I mean, that's what Duchamp ruined art forever. There's no one post Duchamp. Sorry, there's no one post Duchamp. And now when you say that's a fact, I can prove that. No one, there's a million Duchamp clones and they're everywhere, but he ruined modern art and it needed to be ruined.
Yeah.
It's like, have you ever read Writer's Journey by Christopher Vogler? You know, he
No.
studied. Oh, you should. He studied Campbell and realized that, you know, George Lucas admits it. He got Star Wars out of Campbell, Joseph Campbell.
Yeah.
Campbell soup, and he mixed up this soup, and Christopher Vogler basically gets hounded because he wrote a book how to use Campbell to write screenplays, and then he gets criticized by Hollywood saying it's just funny because it's like James Joyce, who was Joseph Campbell's main influence, Finnegan's Wake. I always say James Joyce indirectly ruined Hollywood, and it needed to be ruined because all it was fucking 14-year-old boy medium with the Star Wars and Jaws, and it needed to be ruined. And now it's, you know, anyways. Somehow I go off on too many tangents and you keep saying sorry when I'm talking all over you. I should be the one saying sorry.
Yeah. I mean, okay. I just think that what was the original question? It was about
the original question. Thank you for being comprehensive and listening. You're a good listener. Okay. It's why do we ignore what artists have to say?
Right. I mean,
that's real.
I'm not sure we do. I would say I do think. I mean, the we there is a big statement. I think lots of people listen to what artists say, and artists affect culture, and that has an effect. It's just not as. I mean, in some ways it can be a really big effect, and in other ways it's not. Right? I mean. I don't know. We can make all the art we want about Trump, and he's still president, right? Like, I don't know. I mean, it helps to a point, but I don't think it's fair to say that we don't listen to artists. I think we do.
Yeah. Well, The Apprentice got some Oscar nominees, and it's like, what? I thought that all it did was hoik them up. But that's like, did you see the new Bob Dylan film?
I haven't seen it yet. No.
Yeah. Anyways, I won't go into that. Okay. Do artists have moral obligation?
Yes. I mean, we all have moral obligations. Yeah. Artists are not exempt from that.
Yeah. Are you more afraid of new ideas or more afraid of old ideas?
I'm not afraid of ideas.
Yeah. You're knocking them out of the park, Adrian. You're good at this. Can you conjure up your earliest memory ever or one of them?
Yes, actually, this is I think, a kind of interesting story. So I was born in Brazil, 1973. I lived there until I was 7. And then I moved to the US, hence my accent. And I lived there until I was 13, then went to Chile, and then went back to the US. But when I moved to the US, I was bullied a lot. I was small, I hadn't grown yet, I had weird teeth, I was Brazilian, had a funny accent. So, you know, I was bullied at school. And I came home, and at that point, I spoke Portuguese to my family. My mother is English, so she always spoke to me in English. So I understood English, but I had an accent. My father's Chilean, also speaks with an accent, but speaks English. I came home from school and I said, okay, I want to fit in. I'm not going to speak Portuguese anymore. I'm not going to play soccer anymore. I'm going to play baseball. I'm going to do all the things to be really American, right? Okay. It helped, I guess, to a certain degree. I was still bullied a lot. It didn't really matter. But what happened was then when I was 13 and we moved back to Chile, because my father's job changed or whatever, and we had to move back to Chile. At that point, when I was moving back to to Chile, I had no memory of my life in Brazil. At that point, my earliest memory was being 6, turning 7 in the US, right? So it was a coherent identity. At that point, I was like, I'm American. My earliest memory is being in the US. I watch American TV. I eat American stuff. I play baseball, right? And then I went to Chile. And at that point, my parents always spoke Spanish to each other because that's how, they spoke Spanish. So I didn't really understand them. I didn't think I did or whatever, but I obviously heard Spanish all my life, and my first language was Portuguese. But when I left to go there, I thought I only spoke English, and I have no memories of anything other than the United States. I get to Chile, 13 years old, and I start to meet family members that I knew from when I was a kid in Brazil that now lived in Chile. So meeting these old family members that I hadn't seen in forever, trying to speak Spanish, right? And whenever I tried to speak Spanish, all this Portuguese would fall out, right? Because they're very similar. With that experience of Portuguese coming out and meeting these family members, there was a night where I was with my mom at home, and I suddenly had this rush of memories from Brazil. And I was like talking to my mom, and I said, "Oh yeah," like, "Oh, I'm remembering this. Like, yeah, we were in Brazil. We lived in this place. We lived in this apartment, and you go in the door, and like over here is there was a bar. There was a view of the city, and you go down the hallway, and there's like my sister's room was on the left, your room was on the right. There was the bathroom here. I'm like describing this apartment, and my mother says, "Adrian, I can't believe you remember this apartment. We moved out of that apartment before you were 1 year old."
Whoa.
Right? So, but I was able to describe it in detail. And then the next house we moved in, and the next house, and to detail to what was in the room. And like, oh, I walk in my sister's room, and she's got the teddy bear over here, and the this and this. So it all came back to me in this one rush, because it had been sort of repressed to make this coherent identity. So when it came back, it was really vivid and really precise, right? So yes, my first memory would be from before I was a year old, and I remember my mother changing my diaper in that apartment.
Well, listen, that's amazing. Most people have a kind of image first memory, and it's usually around 2 or 3. So I think that's amazing that you psychoanalyze that you could go back to 1 and it was based on imagery. Yeah. Is memory more a curse or more a blessing?
Oh, it's a blessing. Because the memory is how memory is also tricky, right? It's not this stable thing, but it is how we understand ourselves. Yeah. Right. And it's how we understand ourselves as a culture. Also, it's history. It's cultural memory is how we understand ourselves. But it's constantly regenerated. It's constantly new. My memory now of that, like as I'm telling you that story of my first memory, I'm remembering telling my mother that, right? Like my memory is now also mediated.
It's regenerative art. You know about Brian Eno's new documentary?
No.
Every screening is different.
Okay, yes.
Now, come on, that's an innovation. So the filmmaker sends you a file, and he changes every screening.
Yeah, that's great.
You know how much?
Well, I was just thinking in terms of memory and AI again, right? Like all these generative AI things, because I gave a paper on this, so I was thinking about it. It is like memory in the sense that it's always regenerated. You can't generate the same thing again. You put in the same prompt and you get something new, right? Yeah. The model keeps changing, right? And so it keeps adapting. So if I were to make the AI Jeté film again, using all the exact same prompts, I wouldn't have the same film at all, right? No. So it is also a snapshot of that moment of generative AI.
Yeah. No, that's good, because that's why I brought up the Eno, is because that's what he said, that, oh, this is a regenerative art project, but also that's because memory is regenerative art. Yeah. Okay, tell me someone within your immediate family who had an impact on you, and what was the impact?
Well, there's many. The one that jumped to mind would be my great uncle Quentin Crisp. Do you know who Quentin Crisp was?
Of course, yes.
So, he's obviously a very unique and important figure. And so he was also important to me growing up. And the way in which he was influential to me, and the same way in which he was, I'm sure, to lots of people, is about this sense of really thinking about and understanding who you are and sort of honing that and trying to be the most you version of you that you can be, right? Being the most sort of authentically true to yourself version, right? And I think that is universally a good thing.
Yeah. Except if you go to the Alan Watts world, he goes, everybody's trying to figure out who they are. If you figure out who you are, you're fucked.
Well, sure.
But I know what you're saying, and it's true. He wanted to, there's the other thing about identity, which we can get into, but Krishnamurti and McLuhan both say violence is the human search for identity. So there's this thing of like knowing who you are, how you can define yourself on Wikipedia in your bio. Like I love your website has your thing, and it's like looks like one of my things. It goes on for like 4 pages. That's why I love Frank Zappa. His bio was like this: American composer. But you go to Wikipedia and it's like, so who are we? We are our thumbnail picture, our thumbnail. Like what happens with this live TV across the world experience I'm having with you right now, and I appreciate it, is it all boils down to whatever AI picks for our thumbnail shot.
Oh yeah, of course.
On YouTube. So sometimes it's like me looking at my notes and the other person looking this way. It's like, well, they didn't even listen to each other, because I'm always taking notes, so I'm always looking down. But it is, I know what you're learning from Quentin, because he was assured that he could articulate. This is what I feel you're telling me. He could articulate because he was a writer.
Yeah. But also he was forced to confront his identity because of the resistance that society had to who he was. So he was in constant dialogue with how much do I repress who I am to conform to society, or do I just defiantly be who I am? And he decided to defiantly be who he understood himself to be. And that brought him sort of a sense of peace and like a sense of just kind of purpose. And then that was rewarded ultimately because society kind of found him to be worthy of respect and acclaim, right?
He was a great writer. So I mean, he came out of the Oscar Wilde school, Oscar Wilde or Bedell, all those guys. I mean, that's amazing. So outside your immediate family, same question. Someone who had an impact on you, and what was the impact?
Outside of my immediate family. I mean, there's so many. It's hard to think of who. I mean, then I'm just thinking of the list of filmmakers and artists that I've...
Well, one off the top of your head, what comes first? Just one.
No, I would probably say Stan Brakhage in terms of experimental filmmaking, like sort of being one of the first experimental filmmakers that I saw that really made me think, wow, there's a whole other way of making films. I think that's probably fair.
So that's in Iowa. You're going to college. When did you see your first?
No, that was in New York when I was at School of Visual Arts and first kind of hanging out at Anthology.
Good. Okay. Did your parents raise you in particular religions?
No, I'm technically Protestant, Episcopalian, I guess. I don't know, Church of England, whatever that is. But no, I never went to church. I never had any kind of a religious upbringing.
Do you pray?
No.
If God exists, what would you like God to say to you after you die?
I mean, wow, that's a weird question. If God exists, okay. What would I want him to say? Welcome? I don't know.
Yeah. Cool. Do evil people exist, or does evil use people as a vehicle?
No, evil people exist. I don't think there's a thing called evil that uses people. I think people make it, we have a moral code and we interpret people's actions as good or evil. And some people make actions that we interpret as evil.
Really, the hidden question, Adrian, is how do you advise someone to deal with an enemy? And I'll set it up. Alan Watts says, if you acknowledge your enemy, you empower them. Coppola stole from the mob and the samurai. Keep your friends close and your enemies closer. JFK said, forgive your enemy, but don't forget their name. And Fellini says, I need an enemy. It's a lot of thoughts. The basic question is, how do you advise someone to deal with an enemy? First, how would you respond to Alan Watts? If you acknowledge your enemy, you empower him.
I mean, that's true, but it depends. You can't, there's no limit to that, because if your enemy is attacking you, you need to defend yourself. So you can't defend yourself by just not acknowledging that it's happening. Right. So
that's like George Harrison. The guy broke into his house and he's just, the guy's stabbing him and he's going, oh, he's just, and then, his wife comes in and she's a hard ass Hispanic lady from San Pedro, and she just fucking beats the shit out of the guy. I mean, you can see it in the documentary, but I know what you're saying, that a lot of people flip it. They go, well, no, you have to acknowledge your enemy or you're going to go down.
Yeah. I mean, depends. But in a certain degree, like sometimes you can ignore it, right? You can. Yeah. That is a way of not giving it power, like with Trump, right? Yeah. There's nothing, if everybody just ignored him, he'd lose his mind, right? But that's not going to happen, unfortunately. Hey, would it be possible to pause for a minute while I went to the bathroom?
You can pause, definitely. I'm just going to talk about going to your website. Yeah.
Okay, I'll get back.
And so Adrian is a filmmaker whose website is listed below. And I highly encourage people to check out his work. And he has an excellent website. And he teaches in England. And there's lots of material to study up on the filmmakers that he has explored. And the filmmaker he brings up and we've talked about, I'm going to step right over here and get my book here, Strange Questions, Experimental Film as Conversation, where I interview experimental filmmakers. And I think Chris Marker is one who probes a lot of the people I study. I think Chris' comment best is said, I abandoned Gutenberg for McLuhan a long time ago. And so we brought this up. My preface says, Marshall McLuhan, I don't know what I think until I've said it. And Joan Didion says, I don't know what I think until I write it down. But it was George Duhamel. I can no longer think what I want to think. My thoughts have been replaced by moving images. So more Thanks. To probe here, my friend. This has really been fun. And, we got about 7 more minutes. Can you go longer or how long?
I'm fine. Yeah, I'm fine now. Okay. Now that I've gone to the bathroom.
Yeah, that's fine. Let's see if we go maybe another 15 or 20 minutes over the 90 minutes. And then hopefully you can agree to do a part 2 so we can actually talk about filmmaking. Even though we did a lot, and I loved how I'm open for tangents, stories, anecdotes. You don't have to answer the question, but
I like trying.
Yeah, but you've done a great job, and it really was just that that first memory thing was so important. In fact, I was just quoting from my book, Strange Questions, Experimental Films Conversation, because this one quote sort of capsule, sort of what you said by saying images early on. What's your favorite form of information was images. And George Duhamel, do you know how to pronounce his last name? Duhamel. Duhamel?
Duhamel sounds
Yeah. He
right.
says, I don't know what I think until I say it. That's what you said, McLuhan. I don't know what I think until I write it. That's Joan Didion. Duhamel said, I don't know. I can no longer think what I want to think. My thoughts have been replaced by moving images. So, the hidden, it's more like, we're talking about how do you deal with enemies, like a bully. Like if a friend said to you, "Oh, I'm being bullied," what kind of advice would you give them?
Well, I mean, I can talk to that because I was bullied a lot as a kid. And
Yeah,
my strategy when I was a kid, because I was small, so I didn't have the option of fighting back because I would lose. So the way in which I managed to get through all of elementary school despite being bullied a lot. I've never been in a fight.
wow.
But there were many instances where a fight was imminent. And the way in which I would get out of the situation would be to basically, a bully's power comes, they're posturing to another group of people, right? The people that were bullying me weren't the popular kids. They were other losers that had more friends than me,
Yeah,
right? That wanted to look cool to an upper echelon of hierarchy, right? So in order to go up in the world, they needed to bully me to look cooler. So the way in which you undo that is by making them seem less cool, right? So I would make fun of the guy in a way that would make his friends laugh.
yeah.
And so once his friends were laughing at him, he wouldn't have the confidence to continue. And then I would use that opportunity to get out of there.
How'd you learn that?
I don't know. It just happened.
But I mean, did you watch TV and movies or read books? Like how do you make fun of people? Like that's satire kind of helps take people down.
Yeah, but it's mostly because the guy that would be bullying you would be a bit of an oaf, right? And he has some other minions that are. There's just a big pile of insecurity there too, right?
Yeah. But
and so
you're aware of insecurity. There's some sort of awareness level you got.
yeah, there's an awareness of like, because you're under threat when you're being bullied, it gives you an opportunity to kind of analyze the threat, right?
Yeah.
And so I would have to be sort of assessing all the other people in class and be like, okay, this person's a bit weird this way,
Yeah.
or this person's a bit, dorky in that way, or they're, stupid, or, and so if that person was bullying you, you have a comeback, right?
Yeah.
And so the objective was to make the minions laugh.
Yeah.
And if you can make the minions laugh, then you can get out.
Yeah. But that's also, I'm saying, where did you get that from, the way your parents raised you or on your own?
Probably a combination of both. I
Yeah.
am who I am because of how my parents raised me, right? But that came from me.
Yeah. Well, here's Nassim Taleb. Games were created to give non-heroes the illusion of winning. In real life, we don't know who wins or loses, but we can tell who a hero is. Gregory Bateson says, if the criminal gets caught, does he go, whoa, my criminal skills weren't up to snuff that day? Or does he go, oh, I did something morally and socially wrong? So basic question is, you can go wherever you want with those prompts, but the basic question is, does punishment work?
I mean, to a degree,
Yeah.
it's a deterrent. I mean, but I mean, those prompts didn't seem to be about punishment. It seemed to be more about, do we understand? Does a criminal understand themselves to be wrong?
Yeah.
And I don't think they do. Right?
They don't.
The criminal thinks society is wrong.
Yeah.
Right? And they're the heroes. Right? Against something. Right? Nobody understands themselves as the villain in the story. Nobody's, we're all main characters, but none of us are the villain. Right?
Yeah. Yeah, you're a good listener. Yeah, that's good, because it's a non sequitur in a lot of ways. And like one other person besides you have says, no, those prompts don't really lead to this, but what does work? Does reforming someone, what do we do? Like here's a question I used to ask, Adrian, that's not even applicable now. If Trump gets thrown in jail, he can't run for president, and he writes a book and says, I'm sorry, would you forgive him?
I mean, would I forgive him? I mean, if it was genuine, maybe. But who cares if I forgive him?
Yeah.
Right? I mean, I don't know. Trump's a bad example, right? But if somebody did something terrible to me, I don't know, murdered my partner or something, and genuinely felt bad about it, would I forgive them? Maybe.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, would I want to hang out with them? Would I be okay with them? No. But would I if they genuinely really felt terrible about what they've done, and why not?
Yeah. That's if you had a vote yes or no on capital punishment, how would you vote?
No.
Okay.
I mean, that's just that's irrelevant to whether the person is forgiven. I just don't think we should be in the business of killing anyone ever.
I agree 100%. James Joyce was the first projectionist in Dublin 100 years ago. He basically checked out. He said, this is stupid. Why should I go inside a building and see a movie of a tree when I can go outside and see a real tree? Years later, Faulkner said, sometimes the best fiction is more true than journalism. Why do we have to recreate things in order to get them? Why do we have to go to a theatrical play of people acting out life? Why don't we just live life?
Well, we can do both. It's not one or the other.
But I mean, it's basically like what I asked Pedro on the boardwalk once in Venice. So I could run into anybody famous. And I went, hey, what's the function of cinema? I mean, that's what it basically is saying. What's the function of cinema? What's the function of storytelling?
Well, I mean, I think it's, stories, first of all, in terms of storytelling, right? I mean, that's how we make sense of the world. We're always making stories anyway. We're making stories right now, right? We think in stories. We understand our life in stories. I understand my day in story. I could tell a story about the interview we just had. So we think in stories anyway. So we're always making stories. So that's how we communicate, right? But that's separate from like looking at a film of a tree when you can look at a tree. When I look at a tree, I'm seeing the way in which I see a tree, and I can only see that myself.
Yeah.
If I point a camera at a tree, it's not the same as the way in which I see a tree. It's something else. And I can also control the camera to create a version of looking at the tree that I like looking. You're seeing, if I show it to you, you're seeing how I like to look at a tree through a camera.
Yeah.
And that's what we're communicating there, right? This is how I use this thing to look at that thing, right? and everybody can do that differently. And so the way in which you do it and the way I do it is different. And that's what we're communicating there. This is how I use this tool to look at that thing.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to maybe approximate the way in which I naturally see it. That would be one thing. Or I'm trying to do something that is totally different from how I see it. But I'm trying to do something with this device to communicate it to you.
Really good. You anticipated a question I'm going to ask very soon. You must have ESP, but I got to shoot this one in because Peter Hollis Frampton said, narrative is born among the animal necessities of the spirit because we're waiting to die.
Wait, what was the first thing that's born? What is born?
Narrative is born among the animal necessities of the spirit because we're waiting to die. That's what he's sort of saying where narrative came from. Can you forget to die?
Forget to die?
Yeah.
No. Dying is happening whether I remember it or not.
Yeah. You're taking it literally. Metaphorically, can you forget to die?
But then what's dying in a metaphor?
See, you're answering the question with the question, Adrian. You win. That's what this series is all about, inventing new questions. But it's funny because that people usually freak out on that question. They go, what do you mean? Can you forget to die? But some people take it metaphorically. But it really made me probe another McLuhan line. He says, all words are metaphoric. So if all words are metaphoric, then what is the word literal a metaphor?
Yeah,
I'm asking, what does literally mean? If it's a metaphor,
I guess that would mean literally means I want to say as close as seamless a metaphor as possible.
Yeah.
Right? As transparent a metaphor as possible.
Yeah.
Right? Which is impossible.
Again, you're anticipating a great question, but that's going to come up some other time. Okay, you anticipated this one perfectly. Peter Greenaway said, cinema is much too rich a medium to be left to storytellers. Are experimental filmmakers telling stories a different way or doing something completely different? Like when me and you watch Tony Conrad's The Flicker, we might have a story go through our head, but it's not storytelling per se.
Yeah. I mean, it's not storytelling in terms of a character who desires a thing and has obstacles and transforms in the hero's journey, and it's none of that stuff, but it is a story of light and dark over time. Right? It has I mean, that is what it is.
But how would you process that, Peter Greenaway's cinema is much too rich a medium to be left to storytellers?
Well, I think what he's saying is that there's more to cinema than just telling a story.
Yeah.
Right? That is part of it. It can be part of it, but it's not all that it is. That there's elements to it that function in a different register than just narrative.
Yeah.
Right? And that those elements can be used in the service of a narrative, or they can be enjoyed on their own terms.
Yeah. That's Andrew Noren really resolved this whole question when I heard him say, or read it. If you put one frame next to another, that's narrative, whether it's abstract animation or character development. But, you know, Greenaway said Marty's not doing anything D.W. Griffith didn't do. All they're doing is filming plays. That's all the history of cinema's been, except for the experimental dudes, you know. I
would also say that an image on its own can tell a story.
Oh, yeah.
Right? So it's not just about putting two images together. Just one image tells a story.
Yeah.
Right? A photograph can tell a story. It cannot tell a story, but it can tell a story.
Go back to Derek Jarman. You know, I watched experimental films in Ann Arbor for so many years. Then I moved to LA in 80. And then Blue came out, and I goes, finally, an experimental film that will completely blow my mind. I had too many expectations, you know, and then I went and saw it, and I went, what the fuck? It didn't work. You know, I wanted it to work more than it did, you know.
Yeah.
But that's when Jen, your Proctor, your friend, made that Pink film. That was, I said, dude, you cloned Derek really well. You know, it was really beautiful what she did, because, you know, we don't see that kind of experimental film has become too cliche. You know, it's like, oh, this, you know, people make films for film festivals. They don't make films to experiment anymore. They're like, oh, I get it. And then they try to do that. Okay, so
it's become a genre, right? So it's a genre that people can work within that's why that fake experimental film exists, right? Because now it's become, you can play on the cliches of an experimental film, just as you can parody it as easily as you can parody something else.
Yeah, it's really a parody. That's the thing. But I love to call it my film festival is 35 years old, and we call it a genuine fake film festival.
Right.
You know, it's all films made with pixel vision. You know what that is?
Yes.
Fisher Price. Okay. Absolutely. So walk us through, just briefly, your tipping point. So you're studying, you're moving around in these countries, you're studying stuff in high school and college. Where did you go? I want to be a filmmaker. I want to be an educator. Because, I mean, those are your two callings, basically, right? Filmmaking and educator. Well, you're a writer, too, wouldn't you say?
I mean, not really. I'm a filmmaker and an educator.
Okay. Where's that tipping point where you go, I see film, so that's what I want to do. I'm an educator. That's what I want to do. Where's your tipping points?
Well, I decided if thinking about what you wanted to be when you were a kid, the first thing I think I wanted to be was a comic book artist, and then briefly an actor, and then a filmmaker. And I would say I wanted to be a filmmaker probably from the age of, 15, I think would be fair. Definitely when I said, okay, this is what I want to do. And to be honest, I think probably what made me want to be a filmmaker was Woody Allen, which now is really problematic. But at the time, he was a big influence.
What couple films? What era of Woody was it that was hitting you?
Well, the early funny stuff, but particularly Love and Death.
You mean like Bananas and Take the Money and Run?
Yeah. But particularly Love and Death. And I still love it. Love and Death is the best film. And I think it's really great. I'm really sad that Woody Allen made it, but he did. But it's a beautiful film, and I love that film.
But can you separate the art from the artist? Is that what you're saying?
I can.
Can you teach me? Well, my friend cannot teach Woody Allen in his film class. He wants to, but he'll get in trouble. And it's like,
I could if I wanted to. I'm just not sure I want to.
Yeah, that's your choice.
And if I did, it would come with a lot of caveats.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, I also love Manhattan. It's a beautiful film, but it's so problematic, right? Like it's it's really bad, right?
But I mean, that's what art's supposed to do, isn't it?
Yeah, but I mean, it's not problematic in the right way. It's not problematic in a cool way.
No,
it's problematic. He was problematic, right? It's not provocatively problematic. It's just he thought this was fine, so he filmed it. It wasn't fine.
Yeah.
Right. So I don't know, but
okay. So that
Woody Allen is what made me want to be a filmmaker.
Yeah.
And then I wanted to be. I guess I became an educator. I mean, that is much more functional. I mean, at a certain point, I wanted a steady paycheck, and I realized that I could do that by teaching.
Yeah.
And so I did that. and I discovered I really enjoy teaching.
Yeah.
Right. And I was happy to do it, you know. But had I been able, if I had I not needed a steady paycheck, maybe I wouldn't have been a teacher.
Yeah.
But I would have still been a filmmaker.
Yeah. But you're making experimental films and documentaries where I know you don't make a lot of money, but documentaries usually is something that can make you money. Experimental film cannot make you money. No, it's like poetry and experimental film. You can't make money. It's like Phil Solomon. When I interviewed him, he says, "I'm a professional experimental filmmaker." I goes, "Yeah, you teach and you get to show at Sundance. So what? You still have to teach to make a living."
Yeah. Yeah. I don't imagine there's, I suppose my Viva Chile Mierda film could have made money, but who's going to, it's a feature. There's more of a chance of a film making money, but it's not.
Right.
The reason why I like teaching is that I don't have to worry about whether my films can make money.
There you go. Yeah. Yeah.
That's like I like divorcing my filmmaking from economic imperative.
Yeah. So here's the exact question to follow up on that. A screenwriting teacher told me great art is when you can clearly see the intention of the maker. Kubrick says the opposite. Great art is when you can clearly not see the intention of the maker. When you're making your own film, no commission, it's all your baby. What role does intention play in your creative process?
Everything. All of it is intention. But that's the point of art, isn't it? I have an intention to make a thing. I intend to make a film that you might want to watch. What else is there?
Duchamp said there's no art without an audience. How much are you thinking of your audience when you're making your film?
To a degree. I'm thinking about my first audience is myself.
Yeah.
Right. So in the first instance, I want to make a film that I want to watch.
Yeah.
Right. And then after that, when I'm refining the edit, I'm thinking, okay, well, I like this, but will other people like it?
Yeah.
And then I might make some changes thinking about what I think other people might respond well to, or, maybe this part is going to be it's a bit long. I'm okay with it because I'm interested in this, but maybe other people are bored now. So maybe I'll trim this bit.
Yeah.
That's about it. It's sort of out of politeness other than anything else.
Cool. McLuhan says everything we invent extends some humanness. Like knife and fork extends our teeth. The shutter in a camera or a projector extends our eyelids. Maybe even non-tangible, say religion or philosophy, extends consciousness. What does the moving image camera extend for you? What humanness? Whether it's film or video, what humanness does the camera extend for you?
Well, vision and thinking.
Yeah.
I think that's it. Then you can editing will add sort of sound and music, sort of emotion, and there's other flavors to it, but like just the camera, I think is both vision and thinking, and because vision without thinking is empty.
Let's imagine me and you were starting the Ann Arbor Film Festival over 6 decades ago with George Manupelli. Should it be more inclusive or more exclusive? Keep in mind that, there's a fraction of animation and documentary, but it's mainly experimental film. When I talked to Chick Strand about this, she said when she was starting Canyon Cinema, Bruce Bailey, they were trying to recreate their 11-cent movie-going experience. So they would show a cartoon, a newsreel, and then experimental film. Brackage came along and says, don't show that other stuff. Just show experimental films. So should we be more inclusive or more exclusive?
Inclusive. I think we should always be more inclusive.
Yeah.
Exclusivity is the realm of pretension.
Yeah. But then what's the services of marginalizing or ghettoizing experimental film? Jackson Pollock was on the cover of Life magazine in 1949. Regular people could start establishing an aesthetic for experimental painting. There was no Bruce Conner or Maya Deren Life magazine covers. It's generally privileged, entitled, I call them rich art kids, who develop an avant-garde aesthetic and dominate experimental film. Any comment?
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think it's really important. I mean, I think there is, I don't like hierarchies.
Yeah.
In any form, right? I just don't believe in them. I think all of culture is valuable, and all of it is worth looking at and thinking about. So I don't really care whether it's high culture or low culture or experimental or reality TV. I like all of it, right? So I think obviously you have to make choices when you're programming a film festival, but it shouldn't be about, is this art? Everything's art. I don't care. Like, is it interesting is more interesting to me than is it art, or is it avant-garde, or is it any of these things? I don't care about that. Is it interesting? Yeah. And if it's interesting, show it. Yeah. And if you don't have enough time to show all the interesting things, then you got to think about which are the more interesting things in the pile. Yeah.
Good attitude. I spoke with Michael Apted 40 years ago. I said, why do rock video editors feel so obliged to edit fast? Most people don't know Abel Gance invented rapid montage in 1922, but it flourished in the 80s with MTV. And Marty Scorsese says, I cut my films faster because of MTV. So Michael Apted said, because we've learned to take in information faster. I asked this question with a bias. Can we literally learn to take in information faster, or are we just brainwashed to believe we can?
Well, I think we can, but you also need pauses, right? I mean, I think there is, you can take in the information, but that's not the same as processing the information, right? So I do think that, like, editing has keeps getting faster and faster, but at a certain point, there also needs to be space for your brain to sort of process what it took in. But I do think that we can visually interpret the image faster and faster, so we don't need to be staying on the image longer to understand the composition and the information in the image. But the contextual information of the image might be really complicated, right? Because it's not just the image on its own, it's how it sits against all the other images. So if there's a bunch, like if you're saying something really complicated with all these images, we need a minute to think about that.
Right? Do you teach Tarkovsky and Bellatar in your film classes?
I don't, mostly because my film classes are more practical. So that is more in the sort of film studies classes that we'll teach it. I wouldn't teach Bellatar. I find Bellatar difficult for myself. I don't have patience for Bellatar. I do love Tarkovsky, but he can also be a bit precious in a way that I don't like. Yeah. But some of it is really, beautiful. Yeah. But Bellatar, I can't spend, 20 minutes watching someone boil a potato.
Adrian, the hidden question there really is it literally possible to multitask?
I mean, I have ADHD, so I would say the answer is no, even though I try all the time. I think you only ever really are doing one thing at a time, and multitasking is just it's just like juggling multiple things one after the other, and it requires you to switch between one and the other in a way that is not always helpful.
Well, let's do a couple more, and then we'll hopefully do part 2 and really get into documentary filmmaking, because I think we could have some enlightening exchanges. What do you think the motive of the cave artist was?
I don't know. It
What's your
seems like it seems like it's about. I mean, I think the role of all art is to understand the world around us. So it's a way of thinking,
yeah,
right? So I think the cave art is the same as any other art in that way, is to try to make sense of the world.
yeah,
And that's the way in which they did it, right? And I think that the cave art also didn't. It was part of a bigger picture, right? It wasn't cave art. It wasn't just about the marks on the wall, and that's it. There was a context to it that we don't have anymore, right?
yeah,
It was part of storytelling, right? I'm sure they painted these things as part of sitting around the fire and telling a story about hunting or whatever, or
yeah,
warning people about whatever, or was instructional or whatever, it was functional in some way. But it was part of a more immersive experience than just looking at the scratchings on the wall, right?
yeah.
And I think all of art is that. I think art is always contextual. It's never
Yeah.
on its own. It's in relation to other art forms and the present moment. And, yeah.
That's amazing. Have you ever read or studied McLuhan?
Yeah. I was into
You
McLuhan when I was at university.
They really, because
Yeah.
he gets blackballed out of college. What, anyways? Because it's interesting. I skipped this question. And I should have asked it. McLuhan says there's no such thing as a good or bad movie. It's a good or bad viewing experience.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. I mean, that's just saying that movies aren't intrinsically good or bad. It's about how you felt when you watched them, which
Yeah.
could be based on all kinds of things.
Because it's like when you say, "Hey, did you see the new Dylan film?" And they go, "Yeah," blah 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 blah, and they don't go, "Well, driving to the theater, I had no problems. The popcorn tasted great. The seats were comfortable. No one was flicking their cell phones in my face during the screening, and my partner put their hand on me during the film." They don't tell you about what you said, the environment, the
Yeah.
bigger. See, that's how McLuhan's misunderstood is he was talking about the invention's environment and not the intention why it was invented. He knows those also exist, but it's
but I also think what he's getting at is I mean, you can watch a bad film and enjoy it if you're watching it in a certain way, right? If you're like, you can watch a bad film and enjoy it because it's so bad that you enjoy it's humorous and you're enjoying its badness. So that's one viewing experience, but so then it was a positive viewing experience. Or you could be looking at it historically. You're watching this film. It was made at this time. It's representative of a particular genre that you're interested in, and you're thinking about the ideas around that cultural moment. And this is a good example of it. So you're watching it in this sort of dispassionate way as a sort of historical document. That would be a different viewing experience. Still a bad film, but it's enjoyable for you because it's making you think interesting thoughts about culture. So I think it also depends the state of mind of the viewer when they're watching it. What they're watching it for matters.
Yeah, because the proof is Ed Wood. He's voted the worst filmmaker in the history of Hollywood, but people go to his films and have a good time. And Timmy Burton makes a whole film about him.
I once wanted to teach a class which was about bad films.
That's great. Right? Well, it's called Guilty Pleasures is another way to put it.
And I like, you ever see the film August Rushed?
No, tell me about it.
Oh, it's terrible, but in such a fun way. Yeah. It's got, who does it have in it? It's got Robin Williams. It's got like Kerry Russell, I think, and Jonathan Rhys-Meyers and some kid. And so basically it's a kid who's an orphan. His parents were Jonathan Rhys-Meyer and Kerry Russell, and they were like wonderful musicians, and it was very like emotive, and they played music, and it was very heartfelt. And he grew up in this world of music, but then he was like, they died, I think, or they were left, or I don't know. He ended up in an orphanage or on his own. I don't quite remember. But basically, he was missing his parents, and then he's kind of on the streets like Oliver Twist. And Robin Williams is a Fagin type character who takes him under his wing to like, as a beggar to like, I mean, it's ridiculous, right? And so he's like bearded, like Fagin character taking this kid under his wing. And at a certain point, in their like, criminality, it turns out that he discovers that this kid is a musical virtuoso. And really good, and manages to get him into like Juilliard or something. And the whole point of this movie is so that he can play a concert in the city, because he wants to play this song so that his parents will hear it and come back together.
Oh, yeah.
So it's the most saccharine, ridiculous, sentimental, trite garbage.
Right.
And everybody in it is all these actors that like sincerely playing this really like ridiculous storyline. It's hilarious. It's one of my favorite bad films ever.
Yeah, it's beautiful. That's a perfect example of it. It can be a good viewing experience, because you've formed an aesthetic on what's good or bad. I mean, that's the thing about experimental films. I've formed an aesthetic of what's good and bad in experimental film. Well, how can you do that if everything's an experiment?
Yeah.
But the other one about that is a film teacher at Cal Arts loves to quote David Lynch, who said, yeah, even if you're watching a bad film, you can look at the lamps and the design on this. It's like, I'm not going to waste my time fucking watching stupid films, because I mean, now we're more likely to turn films about. When we grew up, I mean, my age, you don't turn a film off. You watch the whole thing. You suffer through the whole thing. You don't.
But I also agree that I think you should be like, for a long time when I worked at Anthology, I used to be able to get free movie tickets at other movie theaters around the city. So I would go see everything, right? So I would go to the cinema to see any old movie. Yeah. And I remember like there's many instances that I would go with people, and you're in this movie, and like, I don't know, I went to go see this film called X versus Sever. Ever heard of that? With Antonio Banderas. It's a horrible action film. It's really terrible. It's really, really like cheesy, bad film. Yeah. And I was watching it with my partner at the time. She wasn't my partner, but we were watching this film, and we were both hating it. Yeah. Right. But we didn't say anything to each other. Right. Right. And we watched the whole film. And when we left, we're like, oh, and so we turned to each other and said, oh, I really hated that. I was like, I hated it too. Why didn't we fucking leave? We didn't even pay for this. Right. Like we could have left at any point. There was like 3 people in the cinema. Like it wouldn't have been embarrassing. We could have left at any time. You feel obliged. I mean, that's with my Pixel Vision Festival. The films are so bad sometimes, and people go, you should charge because then people will stay. I goes, no, I always have had free admission. Then they feel easier to leave because they're not like so that money thing. Yeah, they're not trying to get their money's worth. That's again that horrible capitalism thing. We're brainwashed, that value in money, because it works in the opposite, Adrian. It's like, oh, because I make my money being a teacher, I can be freer to express myself. And does that mean, oh, then your art is more true? Oh, I'll tell you, this is Schrader. There's 2 quotes I always quote. Schrader says, the role of the artist is to attempt to sell out but fail. Now, that's funny in a way, and most people laugh like that, but in essence, it's got this sneaky underbelly level that says, oh, I'm an artist and my art is so pure. I tried to sell out and it failed. So I'm still sell out.
I couldn't. I tried to sell out. I was like, give me a break. Just sell out and fucking make a film that's not a sellout. Whatever, what
Yeah.
is. And then the other one is Al Flipside. He spawned every punk in LA, and then they all became bank executives. Don't sell out, sneak in. And I mean, that's sort of cool. How can you sneak into instead of doing the normal route? Everybody, that whole NYU, what NYU stands for. Now you're unemployed. I'm always leery of all those kids who came out of NYU, but there's a lot of great filmmakers who came out of NYU.
Yeah.
But it seems to me they calculated it too much. It's like, there's not any kind of rough, funky edge. It's just like too, like Cameron being a Kubrick clone. That's the one gets me.
Well, I mean, again, it comes back to the problem of needing a job, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we shouldn't need jobs.
We should not need jobs. That's back to the great one you said is, oh, AI is going to take away my job. It's like, good, go invent a new job. You don't even need a job.
Yeah, I mean, if the world was just, there should be especially if robots and AI start doing stuff, then cool. Then there's a wealth of resources that we don't have to labor for.
Yeah.
But resources should be distributed in a somewhat equitable way. I'm not talking for complete communism or everyone gets exactly the same amount. There can be a range in here, right? But everyone should have, at the very least, as a human being, you have a right to survive. You have the right to shelter. You have the right to education. You have the right to healthcare. You have the right to food and water. So you don't need to do anything, and you're not going to you don't need the basics for survival. So if everybody had that, which I think we could engineer the world in such a way that would be possible, and then we can do stuff and get more money if we wanted to, but to do that you would need a limit, right? I think there should be a maximum and a minimum, right? There should be a minimum to survive on that will give you all the things of the world, but then in order to do that we need a maximum, right? We don't need Elon Musk and Bezos or whatever to have enough money that they couldn't even spend in their lifetime or multiple lifetimes. That's ridiculous, right? So if we had a world that was just, then it wouldn't matter if there was AI taking, you would do jobs because you enjoyed doing them, right? Or they were needed and you could do them and you felt good in doing them. Right. We would do the things that needed to be done. And if everything that we needed to be done was done, everyone else can relax and, do what they want to do, make art, whatever it is. Right. It shouldn't be, we shouldn't need to do my art to eat food. This shouldn't be the choice.
It's like, Emmett Grogan in San Francisco in the 60s wrote a book called Ringolia, and he basically said everything should be free, and if you invent AI, you still have to have people to repair the AI. So don't worry, there's still going to be jobs.
Sure, but I mean but there should be those people doing those jobs. So do those jobs because they want to do those jobs, not because they need to eat.
That's There's the guy who wrote the song Louie Louie, Richard Berry. He was on the radio once and they were talking about jobs, and he goes, job? I can't even spell job. And I loved that line so much. I repeated it for years. And one time a guy responded, he goes, can you spell broke? So let's close out with this, because it's sort of just your thoughts on it. That's what McLuhan loved to quote T.S. Eliot, and he says it's called the watchdog of your mind. Talking about that viewing experience, that when the criminal goes to rob the house, the watchdog comes out, and then the criminal just whips out a juicy steak and feeds it to the watchdog, who runs off, and then it can commit his crime. And then he said that juicy steak is what we go for. We normally go for the content.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what Marcia was sort of using Eliot to illustrate this division between form and content, you
Mm-hmm.
know. And to go back to Chris Marker, I think, kind of inventing, in my opinion, with Sans Soleil, the perfect essay film, which
Mm-hmm.
I call the fake film.
Yeah.
It's easy to make a fake film, a mockumentary or Spinal Tap, a fake film, but to fake it out 2 or 3 levels deeper where you can't tell if Chris Marker's letters in Sander, is that how you say,
Yeah.
are they,
Sandra Krasna.
are Chris, is Sanders Chris's voice? He wrote those, or did he actually find those?
Yeah. I don't know.
He
I
he
think he
wrote
wrote.
them,
He wrote them.
right? He wrote them, but he doesn't say. And he starts that movie with the T.S. Eliot quote. I'm always
He does.
fond of
Yeah,
that.
absolutely. Yeah, he does.
But it's also, he doesn't tell you, so you can't tell what's real or what's fake. Well, the best example is when they
Well,
tested Spinal Tap. Someone wrote on the card, "Good movie, but you should have got a better rock group." So you know what I'm saying, and it's back to you bringing up truth, because you have this thing. That's a fact. That's truth. So yeah, I'm sorry I went on. Go ahead, whatever you want to say.
Well, I was just going to say that the film isn't fake, right? Like the footage is real. Like those are like
the footage is real.
The footage is real, but what the footage means is fake.
Yeah. Or it's a double fake. Here's a even better. Eric McLuhan taught us this. The word fake and the word fact, F-A-C-T, both come from the Latin word to make.
Right.
So fake carries negativeness. Fact carries, is believable.
Right.
But indeed, how much of Chris is really coming out, his true inner self is coming out in Sans Soleil.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I guess it's about true, right? The footage is true in the sense that it's photographic.
Yeah.
Right? I mean,
yeah.
But the editing, voiceover, text, and sort of context in which we're like receiving these images is constructed. But that also is true in a way, right? It's a true piece of artistic expression. It's just not literal truth in that way.
That's I.F. Stone said it best. The truth as I see it. or Groucho Marx said, who are you going to believe, your eyes or my eyes? Anyways, we went almost 45 minutes over. Really fun, Adrian. You're really cool, dude. I appreciate your time and energy. And send me those 2 films if you don't mind.
Sure, I'm happy to. Yeah.
If you don't, I won't circulate them. But I mean, until when they're it's on YouTube, and you let me know, because I would love to tell people. We really should have I've done salons on Herzog and Godard where we have 4 or 5 or 6 people, and I've never done one on Marker, and I don't know why, because he is, to me, the godhead. He's just like, when I saw Sans Soleil, it was like all over with. I was like, that's it.
Yeah, me too. I really love that film.
And then people watch it.
I saw that before I saw La Jetée.
And imagine on a big screen.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because most people can't even see it on a big screen, so it's totally different, And it's like, no, you have to see it on a big screen. It can't, So
yeah, I was on a panel at King's College London last year with it was a panel at an AI conference thing that they were doing. But basically, there were 2 other filmmakers that made remakes of La Jetée using generative AI.
What?
Yeah, so there were 3, and there's another one too. So there was like multiple remakes of La Jetée using generative AI. And so they thought that was interesting. So they put us together on a panel. They all were done. The 2 other people that were Joanna Zielinski and I forget the other filmmaker's name.
Send me the list of them.
Yeah.
And are the other ones as good as yours?
Well, they're different. I think they're all good in different ways. They're just totally different. Mine is a very sort of like attempting to make a faithful, like exact copy that falls apart and doesn't really work.
Yeah.
But the other ones were like, one of them took the first line of La Jetée and then had ChatGPT write a story based continuing from there.
Yeah.
Hold on a second. Sorry.
They
So continuing from there.
Your time was up, dude. They knew it. There, your time's up. But no, go ahead. I'm sorry.
So just quickly, one of them just used the first line of the film and then had ChatGPT create a new story based on that, and then created images around that. And then the other one took all the lines from all the actual voiceover of La Jetée and used those as prompts to generate different stuff.
Yeah.
So you get 3 totally different results from using the same source text, which I think is cool.
You know, I was going to Ann Arbor 5 years ago going, when people going to let computers make experimental films? I mean, the experimental films are so random. It seems it would be perfect. And some of them would go, well, a couple of my students have tried, blah, blah, blah. And, you know, it's now like, what are you going to do? Make a clause and say, we don't accept films that were made by computers? How are you going to know? I mean, unless you tell, you know who got busted for doing the AI generated voice? It was like, Anthony Bourdain's doc. And it's like, then the Warhol doc. Did you see the 4-hour Warhol doc?
Yeah, I did. Yeah.
It's really good. And then they had to put a fucking line underneath there. I said, don't do that. Just put it at the end. Don't distract me, you know.
Yeah. And also, like with the Bourdain one, I felt like that was okay. I mean, it was his words. It was an email that was written to that guy, and they used voice cloning so that it would sound like he was saying those words. It was just an artistic choice instead of like having text on the screen or having someone else read it. It made you feel.
Now they have to list it. Is there a rule like you have to say?
Yeah, I mean, that seems foolish, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, I say in my films that stuff is AI generated because that's kind of
at the end or at the beginning.
Well, AI Jetée in the title.
It's in the title. Yeah.
And the other one I say at the end.
Yeah. At the end. But you know, that's the big thing. Ann Arbor didn't accept video for 40 years. And they're like, dude, get over it. Yeah, that's video, everybody. So they finally let it in. I says, what's the difference? Bruce Conner shot 16 millimeter film off his TV set 40 years ago in his JFK film. What's the difference?
Yeah.
It's video on 16 millimeter. So you're going to, you know, he already got over.
But that's a sort of like precious puritanism, you know, like I don't believe in sort of medium purity.
Yeah.
It's all fair game. It's all like, you know, it's what you do with it. It's not like, one medium is like video is less good than film. Who cares? Yeah.
Well, it's like Pixel Vision. My festival has one rule: you got to have at least 1 second of pixel in it. You know, I mean, if you can't, you know, but that like, I forgot what I was going to say, but it's very similar to this whole thing of, you know, making the rules. Oh no, here's what it was. It's a good spot to end because we'll never end. You got me keep barreling on in a million things. Tony Conrad said, the job of the artist is to break rules before they're even made.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah. It's the same thing McLuhan said about Joyce. Joyce was solving problems before we even realized they were problems.
Yeah.
All right, Adrian, thank you so much. I really learned a lot, and you're an enlightening human being. I can't wait to see your films, and I hope we can schedule. Yeah.
Great.
And,
it was really great meeting you too. Thank you so much for this, Jerry.
Yeah, it can be like 5-6 months down the road, no matter what, whatever works out. And even though I'm going to hit the end broadcast button now, I hope this never ends and we can keep talking forever and ever.
Okay. It was great meeting you. Have a good day.